Hey, what's up, everybody? I hope you're doing super well. Thanks for tuning in today. We are live, and I'm Ricky Carruth. This is the Ricky Carruth Show, and I've got a special guest for us today. This is the president of growth for Compass, and it with where we are with this entire debacle, and the new lawsuit against Zillow. This is a conversation I believe that we need to have in the industry. A friendly conversation about everybody's points of view, because I think conversations like this actually get things done, if that makes sense. So let's bring on Mr. Rory Golod.
You got it right.
Yes. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm fantastic, man. How's it going up there in the great old NYC?
It is 102 degrees here today. So we are in
Really?
Oh yeah, we've had a 3-day heat wave here. So I'm trying not to go outside actually. So
yeah, is it kind of like Vegas, where when you walk on the street when it's like that, you literally feel like you're cooking?
a little bit, yeah, but more like you have a blow dryer blowing hot air on you, because at least in Vegas it's a dry heat, it's humid. It's like being in a sauna effectively. So it's going to break tonight, but
well, I'm in South Alabama, so I know all about humidity.
Day to day, yeah.
One of those things you get used to. So let's kind of dive in. Just for everyone watching that may not know exactly who you are, what your position is with Compass and stuff, maybe just give us a little background and what that position actually entails.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Rory Golod. I'm the president of growth in the West regions here at Compass. I've been at Compass for almost 11 years. So I joined when we were in the earliest days of the company. We weren't even Compass yet. We were Urban Compass. We had less than 20 employees at one office and no idea what we were doing. And today in my role, I oversee growth for the company. So that's all. Growth is for us basically bringing revenue into the company, bringing agents into Compass, bringing brokerages into Compass. And then I also oversee communications and all the West region. So effectively, our business is broken up into two sections. My colleague Neda Navab and I run the day-to-day core business. So she runs the East, which is Chicago and East, and I run the West, which is everything west of Chicago. Quite a few hats.
Nice. When did you originally get into real estate, get your real estate license, start selling, stuff like that?
So this all started for me when I started at Compass. So in 2014, I joined Compass, and in the earliest days of the company, a lot of us who had just come into the company, we didn't have prior real estate experience. My closest experience when I joined was my brother's a commercial real estate broker. And so I joined the company, but because we were so small and we were a startup, all of us were basically thrust into every role at the company. And so throughout my time here, I've had to effectively manage offices and be a sales manager. I've had to negotiate contracts. I've had to hold open houses. I've had to do transactions. I've had to do literally every part of the process, because when you're in a startup, it's all hands on deck. I can't tell you how many listing presentations I've been on, open houses that I've been to and held. So it's been 11 years doing this.
So you came on as an agent, or what did you?
I came on as an employee. So
got you.
And I've always worked on the employee side, but
you never had a real estate license yourself?
Never prior to Compass. No, never sold, wasn't an agent. But I like to think spending 11 years almost, I've probably met with, I've counted this up. I probably met with close to 20,000 agents in the last 11 years. I've probably sat in probably 500 living rooms and listing presentations. I mean, I've done every angle of this business, every aspect of the job. And so I very much understand it, and more than anything, respect it. Agents are the ultimate entrepreneurs. And I think we sort of at Compass think about it this way. We're entrepreneurs building for entrepreneurs. Anyone who doesn't get a paycheck, anyone who has to hustle and grind and make it happen no matter what, and in many cases against pretty significant odds. Like look at the last couple of years, right? The market, everything going on in the macroeconomic picture, it's not made anything easier. And so I love agents. I couldn't love working for them anymore.
Mhm. Yeah, I would, I always say agents are the most resilient people on earth,
Hands down.
with everything that they've been through, everything that's getting thrown at them. Um, the commission thing with the Sitzer Burnett, I mean, um, everything. But yet here they are, and commission rates haven't changed at all from when
And
I got in the business in 2002.
mhm.
2002, as an agent, and I sold for 20 years till 22. Commission rates are the same today as they were back then. You might have to take a few more 5%ers than you used to back then, but I don't even know if that's true because you know
Well, and some of that, you look at it, right, and the percentage of people who use an agent to buy a home has consistently stayed in the mid 90s for a long time. So, this thought of, oh, people are going to stop wanting to use agents, that hasn't come to fruition. The commission lawsuits, I mean, think about it. Our industry, agents, had to withstand last year a multi-week media blitz where every headline was attacking their commission and the amount of money they were paid. No other industry has to wake up in mid-March last year to headlines in every publication. Many of those headlines were wrong, that says you don't deserve what you're getting paid, and still manage to
mhm,
work hard, deliver. And as you said, it hasn't moved, and it
mhm.
shouldn't, because if anything, transactions aren't getting simpler. They're getting more complicated. The work
Yeah,
agents are doing is expanding, so they should be getting paid more, you know?
that I say all the time, they're underpaid.
Oh,
If you look at
absolutely.
if you look at what they make gross and you subtract what their expenses and you divide that by how many hours they work on the deal, it's not a whole lot of money. The only way that it can become lucrative is if you have the mental capacity, and this is good for agents to hear, that you can do multiple deals at once. And not everybody has the skill level, the mental capacity to be able to handle 5, 10, 20 deals and juggle all that, plus getting new leads and then handling current listings and so on and so forth. Um, but they're underpaid if you look at hours, hours put into a deal minus expenses. And honestly, that's why I believe commissions haven't went down, because they can't. It's like rock bottom. Like,
Exactly. If you think of, business brokers, so when people sell a small business, dry cleaner, laundromat, car wash, something like that, business brokers are getting 10%, right?
yeah,
Um,
right.
and those transactions they're big and they're important, but they're nowhere near as financially and emotionally as important as buying or selling a house. And then
Yeah.
I always say, when I have friends who will call me and ask me, like, what, I'm going to work with a Compass agent, what should the commission be? And I'm always like, no, pay the full commission. And the reason why, forget the financial side. You have to think of a great agent as an insurance policy for you. Something is going to go wrong in this transaction. And many times you might not even actually know what it is. But when the proverbial crap hits the fan, you having a great advisor and a great agent, at that moment, you would pay way more than 3% to solve that problem. And
Yeah. I always say the definition of value that an agent can provide a customer is understanding their situation, their specific situation, more than they even understand, and then
mm,
pointing out potential future potholes and problems that could arise that the customer doesn't even see from this point. I think that's where real value is, and this is why I joined this company. I'm a partner of this company called Raise. I don't know if you've heard of Raise. Have you heard of Raise?
yeah,
Yeah, I mean they solves the problem where there's complete transparency, because it's like there's all this transparency up to the transaction happening, but then it's like, well, I don't really know what my agent's doing. That's why there's such a big misconception between what the general public thinks we do and what we actually do. And Ray solves that problem because it's an app that basically follows through the transaction and alerts your customer and then prints out a closing report that says, all the, 100 tasks that we did, how many houses we looked at that you didn't buy, how many offers we made, how many phone calls, et cetera, that even the agent can't articulate, So,
it's interesting you bring that up. For the first, call it eight years or so of us building software and building technology for agents, so much of what we built was focused on an agent's day-to-day workflow, the tools that they needed to run their business. And I would say the kinds of tools that the client doesn't care. Like, no client cares if you have a great CRM. No client cares if it only took you 5 minutes to put together your marketing collateral. And then about 2 years ago, we started to shift to building more and more tools that agents would use with the client, right? That the client actually could touch and feel. And what you're describing, we launched this year, Compass One, which is a client dashboard, a dashboard for an agent to go give to a buyer or seller. So they can say, when we go through this transaction, we're going to use our software, and you're going to see every part of the transaction, every document, every interaction, the timeline, checklist, everything. And the interesting thing we're starting to see is it's not just something that buyers and sellers love, because it is kind of crazy if you think about it. For a long time in our business, we went to sellers. We said, hey, give me the opportunity to sell your most valuable asset. And then we sent them an email, and that was it. There was no dashboard. There was no app. And one of the things that we're noticing is that agents who use Compass One are charging higher commission rates. And I think the reason why, and similar to what the product you're talking about, is when the client can physically see and touch software and see the work that you're doing. When a client gets a dashboard and it shows the entire transaction checklist, a lot of them are like, oh my God, I didn't even realize that these 65 steps were going to happen. This is so much work. I'm really happy I'm not having to do most of this. Thank God you're doing this. In fact, some of these things, I don't even know what they are. You know what? Here, I'll pay whatever it is. I think we have to do a better job of actually showing the client what we do, because good agents are a victim of their own success. They make it look easy. When you think something's easy, you don't want to pay for it.
Yeah, no doubt. I think we're going to have a lot less agents in the future, and that's going to be and the agents that make it are going to become more efficient on the back end through AI technology, and more transparent on the front end. I think that's where we need to marry those two and start pushing that narrative. So I guess about a month ago, you reached out to me.
Yep.
And we hopped on a Zoom, and we had a great conversation, and you wanted to come on the podcast. And so I said, great, let's do it. And so I set it up, set the date up and everything. And I wanted to bring James Dwiggens in, because that's really the conversation that the industry needs, because in my opinion, he is probably the most educated on this entire, NAR, MLS situation, Zillow, et cetera, being the CEO of Next Home, et cetera. And the moment that I, tried to put all that together, you backed away and said, I'm not going to do the show unless it's just you. James can't be on there. So, I mean, before I even get into all the questions or whatever, I just have to understand why no one at Compass, because he had another podcast with an executive from Compass that also backed out 3 weeks ago or whatever. So I'm just kind of wondering, in the sake of transparency and to having a conversation with one of the most educated people in the space, in my opinion, why executives at Compass won't have a conversation, with James on air.
Yeah. Well, first, look, I think there has been so much noise around all of the strategies that we've been sort of putting forward, that this topic overall, and so many voices, and a lot of the voices out there, I don't believe are actually trying to push the conversation forward, or trying to either distract, have an agenda, some cases generate clicks, engagement. And it's hard enough to get a message out there for people to really understand and hear it. And so I wanted an opportunity where we can, and by the way, you're the expert. So I don't know that we need another expert. You understand this as deep as anyone. I want an opportunity where we can have a conversation where I can share the actual unfiltered, direct, clear perspective of Compass. Because oftentimes what I find, and because I speak to so many non-Compass agents, right? In the role I'm in, I'm talking to hundreds of non-Compass agents every week. And oftentimes what I see is people will have a perception about Compass, or a view about either the company or a position we may have or may not have taken. And then they actually talk to us. In some cases, they learn about the company, and then their perspective is completely different. And it's really hard in this current landscape to actually get your message out there. So I figured, rather than come on and have anybody else on and turn this into some back and forth debate, which candidly, we can do that at any point. I think it's more important stuff hey, what is it that actually Compass cares about? Why
Mhm.
is it fighting so hard for this topic? Why is it that we care so much about this, which I think a lot of people actually want to know? Why is it that you all care so much? I thought that'd be a better conversation for you and I to have one-on-one.
No, no doubt. So you agree to come back on with James?
I will come back on and have a conversation with anyone who wants to talk about the merits of why we should have the ability for homeowners to make choices that they want, for agents to make choices on, hey, this company versus that company, any of that stuff. Absolutely. But I think first off, the most important thing is that I want an opportunity, we want an opportunity to be able to share directly from us what it is that we're trying to do here.
Okay, cool. Great. Well, we have that opportunity today. You know, it's you made the rules for this. And this was your caveat, your contingency to just have me here. And so we'll do that, and then I'll set up another one with you and James, and we could. And it's not going to be a back and forth. It's going to be a friendly conversation.
That's
You know,
great.
it doesn't have to be a war. Like, it's literally the conversation that the industry needs. That's what I said when I started out this podcast. Like, these are the conversations that actually get stuff done, because maybe there's a chance that you're too far this way. There's a chance, I would assume that you agree, that you could be too far the other way, right? He may be too far this way. Other people may be too far that way. And if we could come together in some capacity, and the only way to do that is to actually have conversations. We can't just stay in our bubbles and be like, well, not going to talk to them because, you know, don't want to get into a back and forth. No, that's actually how this works. And when we're at this pivotal point in the industry right now, you know, which I'm sure you'll agree, this is a pivotal point in the industry right now when we're talking about doing away with CTP.
I think let's do this. I'll come on and have the conversation with James if he and you know, I don't really know like kind of how like what he does or how his company works, but I would love to see a survey of his agents of what they actually think of this. Because at the end of the day,
Okay.
this is less about like how on one side or another companies or people are. All that I am doing, all that Compass is doing is advocating for something that our agents want. I work for them. The only reason we exist is to make them successful and to help them run a better business. If our agents were saying, don't do this, don't do that, we don't care about this, we don't care about that, we wouldn't say a word about it. I was, you know, talking to someone yesterday and I shared, we've launched initiatives that have been complete flops, right? We've also launched initiatives that have been massively successful. What determined the success or the failure of those has been our agents saying, this is good for my clients, this is good for my business, I want to do this. So when it comes to something like Compass 3-phase marketing strategy, the reason that we're passionate about it is because it's helping our agents win more listings. And so I would just, I want to see a survey of what agents think. You know, it's like people ask me questions about what do you think of NAR or Zillow or private exclusives or all that. It's like, I'm just speaking for what Compass agents want. And if Compass agents tomorrow say, no, you know what, this isn't valuable to us, great. And I think the challenge is that a lot of leaders in this industry are not actually speaking for what agents want. It's a little confusing to me why any brokerage leader would publicly align themselves with a company like Zillow, where they've spent the last decade systematically discounting, displacing, and disenfranchising agents. If I were to stand up and say, hey, I support that company, that would not be something that our agents would take kindly to. So that's the thing that I'm like, I'm more curious about, you know, like what the agenda that Compass has is I want to help agents win more listings. Like that's the agenda. I want to help them grow their business, do more deals, and have a better quality of life. Anything with that agenda, we're going to go all in on. Anything not, we're not going to, you know?
No, I get it. Like, the agents are your customers,
Exactly.
right? And then the buyers and sellers are their customers. The buyers and sellers aren't your customers.
Exactly. They don't pay us. The agents do.
And so everything's kind of pro agent, but not necessarily pro consumer. Like, like we'll go pro agent, even if it's not necessarily pro consumer. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Well, no, because think of it this way, though. The agent is the ultimate proxy for the consumer. You know this. Agents will do anything for their clients. They will sacrifice anything to make their clients happy and help their clients. And so agents are effectively the proxy for the consumer. No good agent is going to advocate for something that's going to hurt their client.
Right.
And look, at Compass, we just have a different quality of agent maybe than other companies. We have 40,000 of the best agents. Our agents on average, the average transaction volume of a Compass agent is, I think, almost 6 times the industry average. We have more of the Real Trends top 1,000 agents than any other company. The next closest company we're twice as big as in terms of the number of those agents. The caliber of a Compass agent is different than other companies. And so those agents are doing everything they can for their client. And so if an agent says, hey, this is good for me, it's good for their clients, because if it's not, they're not going to have a business, right?
Yeah, maybe, because like when I was an agent, I was doing 100 deals a year. And there were times where I was like, ooh, this is a good listing. I wish I could kind of hang on to this a little longer. Right. And I wish I could kind of like work this kind of, on the side without having to go, to the MLS and stuff. So like, I get how agents would be like, oh, this is great. Right. And like, when I do that, when I hold that listing, let's say I sell that listing, I don't know that I actually did the best for my client. I have no idea. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I'm taking a risk there that I didn't get as much, or, and look, I've heard you say, I think you said it when we were on our Zoom, that in the pre-marketing stage, when it's a private listing and they get an offer, the seller can say, I mean, your words were, the seller can just turn the listing down and go to market if they want to.
Absolutely.
But the thing is they have an offer in their hand with a real closing date. And they're like, we might get more, but we have a closing date right here. And so it's hard to turn it down, even though it might not be what they wanted. And it might not be what the market would have actually brought. They kind of feel like, well, we might as well just take this and settle for this, even though, whereas if you would have just went straight to market, we don't know how that would have played out. So I don't know that doing it that way would be the best for clients. I have no clue. I actually know that, like, overall, the long term, I can't see where it's good.
I think the important thing, though, is to step back and actually look at, if you think about the Compass 3-phase marketing strategy, is not about trying to get offers during the private exclusive phase and sell homes off market or off the MLS. That's
okay.
That's not,
hold on. Say that again. I want to.
The Compass 3-phase marketing strategy. The intention of it, the focus of it, the goal of it is not to do deals when a listing is a private exclusive, or get deals done before a listing goes to market. The entire point and focus of the Compass 3-phase marketing strategy is to give an agent more tools and options that they can pitch to a seller, so they can win the listing and end up getting the outcomes that the seller wants. All the seller wants, 3 things: sell the home as fast as possible for the most amount of money with the least amount of hassle, right? So this is just another tool in their toolbox to be able to do it. Now, in some cases, some sellers might say, you know what, this is my number. I want to sell it. I want to be done. I want to move on. For some people, and not everyone, for most people, it doesn't make sense necessarily to sell completely off the MLS. For some people, it does, right? But for a lot of people, what does make sense is, by the time you get to the MLS, by the time you get to the market, that you've tested price, you understand you're priced well, you're positioned well, you've built interest, you've built anticipation, and you can come out to the market in a way better way than you can if you just throw it on. There's no other luxury, and when we say luxury, just like anything where you're spending hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars is luxury. There's no asset of that size where, if you look companies beyond real estate, where they're just going to take the product and just kind of throw it out there and hope for the best. And so what this is really about is giving sellers the choice to have different marketing options. And the great thing about us, we don't have any rules around it. If a seller doesn't want to do the Compass 3-phase marketing strategy, you don't have to. If they want to do it as a private exclusive for one day, great. If they want to do it for 1 month, great. The rules and the entities that are banning agents and fining agents and telling them you have to do this, it's not Compass, it's not brokerages. It's NAR, it's Zillow,
Mhm.
certain MLSs. So I sort of look at it as like, all we're asking for is like, don't ban agents. Don't let the agent and the homeowner decide.
Mhm.
It's their choice. It's their home. It's their choice. And
Right.
free market will determine what makes sense. And if you think about, we put out a number of stats around this program after having it kind of really running for a couple of months as it got really popular. One of them I thought was really compelling was 94% of the listings that go through the Compass 3-phase marketing strategy. And again, it's 3 phases. The third phase is go to market. 94% of those listings go to the market. So the market, the free market's telling you 94%, the overwhelming majority are saying, we want our listing out there on the MLS, on all the portals. So
now, so if everyone, so the three-phase marketing thing is working to get more listings, why do you think that is? Because they're offering something different to the sellers never seen before. The way it's being presented sounds very attractive. Like, it's obvious why that method is getting more listings. It's not like it's a magical thing. It's just like something different in the market, and Compass agents are the one kind of capitalizing on it right now. If we went to the world where everyone does it, and now everyone is doing a 3-phase off-market strategy, now you're right back to square one. You haven't really, there's no differentiating factor in kind of what you're doing.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of competition, right? Because then it's up to companies to innovate and make them better. I'll give you, an example, right? We launched Compass Concierge in 2018, right? So again, and by the way, all the ideas we have, none of them come from us. Like, I don't invent these. These aren't Robert's ideas. They all come from our agents. We just sit with our agents. We talk to them every day, ask them, what are the
Well, like I said, dude, as an agent, I would have loved to keep a bunch of listings private and not share them with the rest of the agents while the other agents are sharing all their listings with me. Absolutely. Well, as far as testing the market, that's something I can't wrap my head around either. Because how is it like a true test? And I'm sure you've heard this argument, but like, how is it a true test when a very, very small percentage of the market is actually getting their eyeballs on this property for a couple of weeks?
Yeah, let me share that just real quick on the concierge point, right? We launched Compass Concierge in 2018, which was we front load the cost of home improvement services to sellers. Hey, if I, as your agent, if we can paint and stage your property, I think it'll present a lot better. Maybe we can get a better price. It's going to cost $50,000. Compass will put up the $50,000 to do that. That program, when we launched it, was insanely successful. And to the point of the agents are speaking, the market is speaking, had tremendous followership. We've since spent billions of dollars doing it, done tens of thousands of projects on it. Other brokerages launched their own versions of it. So after a while, it wasn't as if Compass agents could walk into a living room and say, hey, I'm the only one who can do this. But then it was on us to make the program better, to innovate, to do more. And so in a world where that's happening, that innovation, that competition, that's what our industry is lacking. And part of the challenges you and I were talking about in the beginning of the call, I think they come from the fact that our industry has underinvested in innovation, has undercompeted because of this infrastructure, these rule structures that candidly have been put in place to stifle competition. And so I actually think we would all benefit.
You know how to get released from the rules. You guys know how to do that, correct?
I'm curious to hear your perspective on it.
Just not be a member.
Yeah, but here's the interesting thing, right? So
you can leave NAR, you can leave, MLSs. You don't have to put up with this, man. All this garbage. You can just step away.
But unfortunately, you do, because in this country, if you're an agent and you do not have access to the MLS, you can't do your job. And that's not
right.
And that's not, and by the way, that is
so the MLS, the entire system was built on everyone sharing all the listings within a certain time frame. Like, that's why we're so successful as an industry in the United States. Like, I know agents that were in the US who went to, I believe it's France and Portugal, who went to those markets. They were successful agents in the US. They went to, I know one that went to France, one that went to Portugal, and they're like, this is horrendous. This is horrible, right? Because you've got to go to all these different portals to see all these listings. It's kind of like your guys' setup. You go to compass.com, right? Which I don't even know how a buyer would know to go to Compass. They go to Zillow, realtor.com. Nobody really knows to go to Compass, but you go to Compass, you look at the listings,
Mhm.
And from what I could tell, like Compass listings are at the top, which I don't think any other brokerage actually does that. But at the bottom, there's private listings. Click here.
Mhm.
Like you can't see these, but they're here. And you have to put your information in. I don't know if it makes you sign a buyer agent. Like I don't know how far that process goes once you get there, but you are basically like you can only kind of go through Compass to see those listings. And it's almost kind of how these other countries operate. And it's an absolute disaster because I think this is the slippery slope that people are worried about is that we go to a place where there are all these different portals
Mhm.
and buyers don't even know everything for sale. So it's almost like you have a seller, like let's do the three-phase marketing, like let's get it out there. Okay, nobody can see it except for like our agents, their clients, and then one-on-one agents that come in to look at the book.
Mhm.
And then they sell the property, whatever, right? And then they turn around and now your buyer who was a seller is now like, okay, I want to buy a house. Well, Remax's private listing exclusives has it. So I can't really
Well, I
like
think this is a good opportunity to clarify, and this is why I thought it was so important for you and I to have this conversation, because I think the narrative that Compass is doing this to withhold listings, that Compass is doing this to not have listings be seen in the public, to not share listings with the MLS is not correct at all. So first off, Compass shares more listings with the MLS than just about any other brokerage in any market we're in. I mean, in all of our markets, we're pretty much the number one brokerage. So we actually give more inventory to the MLS than anybody else. When you really step back and look at it, the purpose of the Compass three-phase marketing strategy, as I said, is to help give the seller different marketing options as they think about how to price, how to position. You had a post the other day I thought was really good, which is don't price a home for the market you think you're going to be in or you think you want to be in. Like price it for the real market. And I think so much of what you're speaking about is like the importance of price discovery. One of the best ways to actually nail pricing and get pricing right is to have a period of time where you get feedback from colleagues and people who actually do this every day from other agents in your firm, and they can advise you on, yeah, you know what, that price might not be right. Or maybe the seller has a view. We see this all the time, right?
I get it. Like
Then you bring it to the market at that price.
I get all that. Like I think you can actually do that now though with how the rules are within your brokerage.
Well,
Like
think of
you
it
can
this
have office exclusives that are advertised to your agents to test out the price. I don't think that's against the rules, the
that
current rules.
what is against the rules is sharing that with agents broadly in your own firm if you're doing it sort of at scale, and agents at other firms. And this is probably one of the most important points that I want to share that I think is a huge misconception. I and Compass would happily share every one of our private exclusives with any firm, and as long as they agreed to not alter the listing, right, put someone else's name on it, or monetize the listing. Now, if you look at Chicago, right, so I'll say it again, we will happily share
Then why don't we? Then what are we fighting about? Well, I mean, not us, but like, what are you guys fighting about? Why don't you just?
But it's because the NAR rules and Zillow's rules do not allow that. So I'll give you an example. Look in Chicago,
No, they
MRED.
do allow it. You put on MLS within 24 hours. It's like literally everywhere.
Yeah, but that forces the seller to have to put it everywhere. What about if the seller and the agent only
they can do an open listing?
Yeah, they could do an open listing, but why should they have to? Why can't they?
Because when it's an exclusive right listing, that there's no seller's choice now. They literally gave you the exclusive right to sell this property, and you're part of a membership that has code of ethics and rules that go by. And the reason the rules were in place was to create transparency in the market so that you're not keeping listings from me and I'm not keeping listings from you, from our buyers. That's why all this was put in place.
Yeah, but if you
this is the fabric of why like in the US, we're able to liquidate houses like lightning speed. I'm sure you realize, like, so much faster. It's almost liquid compared to other countries. Like, I know a friend of mine sold a house in Belize. They bought it for 500 10 years ago. They just sold it for 250 after like literally 3 years in hell being on the market and being on 17 websites and still not getting exposure to every single buyer.
You know, it's funny though. listings that go through the Compass three-phase marketing strategy sell about 20% faster than those that don't, right? So if you look at the actual
I would, if I could see that from a third party data company, then I would believe it, right? That's why like CMLS, they say that, off market listings sell for cheaper, takes longer, all that. I'm not bringing that up because you're going to say that's biased, whatever.
Well, it's actually, here's the beauty. It's not that it's biased. We're a publicly traded company. If we put out any type of information, stats, guidance, content, anything, and it is false, we bear financial and legal responsibility. I mean, our executives can go to jail. So the beauty of being a public company is that when you share information, it has to be accurate. Now, when you look at, and I'll give you sort of an example of what people always ask, like, what would you like the world to look like at Compass? Like, what would you want? All we want is for there to be no restrictions on what a seller does. This is the United States. Homeowners, if you go through everything you have to go through to buy a home and own that home, then you should be able to sell that home however you choose. And you shouldn't be forced to do anything. The free market should determine it. That's the beauty of this country. We don't have that in our industry. MRED, which is the MLS that governs Chicago, right? One of the biggest MLSs in the country. MRED has its own, the MLS has its own private exclusive network. So agents at every firm take their off-market listings, they put them into the MRED network. So they're seen by every agent at every company. And then, they go to market and they do what they do.
You can do that now in every MLS.
You can't. Not every MLS has that.
You can literally just click no internet, option no internet. You can even hide the address. And that's what was really interesting. The beginning arguments about this from Compass was seller privacy, but then they got away from seller privacy and went to seller choice.
It was never really about seller privacy. The problem with what I just described is Zillow's new listing ban says that what MRED's doing is not allowed. Zillow's new listing ban says that in San Francisco, where 2/3 of the coming soons are not Compass, they're other agents' listings. You're not allowed to do that. Zillow's listing ban says that you can't share it. When we put that book out, and I know a lot of people were a little confused about it. Like, why would Compass?
I wasn't confused about it. I knew exactly what it was. It was hilarious.
The book was because the rules that govern our industry say that you can't share a listing that's not in the MLS or not on Zillow in a one-to-many capacity, right? It can't be shared in a one-to-many, which means you can't use software or technology. And
you could if it was an open listing, correct?
In some markets, in certain markets,
so you can't do it in probably most markets. You actually do have the ability under the current rules to actually do what you're trying to do through an open listing, correct?
Yeah, but then Zillow came in and said, well, that doesn't work either because it's not on our website. It can't.
I don't know that they said if it's an open listing, if it's an exclusive listing.
Any listing that is not on their website cannot be anywhere on the internet. And I just don't know how in 2025 in this country, a company that's not part of the transaction, that has nothing to do with the transaction, wasn't hired by the agent, doesn't have a contract with the agent, can dictate policy for homeowners and agents. And then you have NAR, which is effectively the regulator of the industry masquerading as a trade group, can say, hey, this is what you can and can't do. And ultimately, at the end of the day, agents, they are the ones who do the work to get the listing. They just want the ability to sell the listing however the homeowner feels. Now, at the end of the day, a lot of people have said, like, oh my goodness, what would happen if every firm started doing this? Well, one, if that's what the market wanted, if that's what the free market said, this is actually more effective.
The free market wants like lower commissions,
I mean, look in a lot of industries, the best charge more than those that aren't, right? So at the end of the day, all we're advocating for, it's very simple. One, homeowners have the ability to choose what they do. Two, that there are not rules that ban and fine agents and homeowners from marketing homes the way they want, right? And lastly, that a client can decide the nuance of how they sell, where the home goes, where it doesn't. Again, if 94% of the listings are going to the market. And of the 6% that are not, another interesting stat, the majority of those are co-broked by agents and other firms. So at the end of the day, people seem to be making a lot of noise about this. I actually think the reason of something that's actually not really the sort of doomsday scenario that people are sort of pushing here doesn't seem to be coming to bear. I think part of the reason why certain brokerages are very much against this is because for a long time, they've so underinvested in technology that I think if we got to a place where this started to become more and more popular, they wouldn't have the technological capability to actually do it. And that status quo for them.
Do what? Have a private listing?
Yeah, to actually share private listings, have private listing portals. I mean, a lot of brokerages don't even have consumer apps. So how can you share coming soons? How can you place them on websites? How can you actually share them? If you don't have the technological underpinnings to do that, some companies do and some companies don't. So again, I think it's sort of, it's very simple, right? Agents and homeowners should have the choice, and companies that they didn't, none of them voted to make Zillow the regulator. None of them, the Zillow is not a government body. They're not a regulatory agency. Agents didn't ask for this. And so ultimately, we as an industry, we should just be working backwards from what they ask for. If our agents, if Compass agents were not winning more listings and not selling more homes and not working with more clients, then it really wouldn't matter, right? It really wouldn't matter to us. All that matters to us is what are the things that are going to help them grow their business and be successful.
Right now they are, but I think if like we did away with CCP and this went mainstream, I don't know where Compass would land on the Real Trends websites or the stats. I don't know that would be pretty, because you've got, who do you have? You have Anywhere with 200,000 agents. You got Keller Williams with 150,000 agents in the U.S. You've got Remax, EXP, Hathaway. Of course, these are brokerages, like different entities, right? So we can say we're the number one brokerage because we're all one entity. But as far as like a brand goes, that basically could operate as an entire brokerage. That might not be a pretty sight for Compass. Kind of the way that I look at what could happen. And I don't think these brokerages are worried about like not being able to compete on a private listing level. I don't think that's why they're like getting crazy about it. I think they're getting crazy about it because we've created this system where our buyers can see listings, and you don't have to sign up with this brokerage or that brokerage to see the listing. And so for us to say, well, Zillow doesn't have to write the change policies about how homeowners do this or homeowners do that or buyers do that, it seems like we're doing the same thing by saying, well, you can't see these 17 listings in Pasadena unless you sign this thing or, put your information in, which kind of brings up a weird thing. Like if I'm a buyer, I'm looking in Pasadena, and I'm just throwing this out there. I don't know if there's even any private listings in Pasadena, and there's 17 private listings at the bottom of your website after I've sifted through all of your listings first. And then I see the private listings, and I click on, I'm like, oh, I want to see these 17 houses. But then, and number one, I don't even know why I'm at compass.com, because I wouldn't know to go there. But if somehow I ended up there and I go there and I see these private listings and I click and I realize it wants my stuff, I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that. Now I'm frustrated as a buyer. I just want to see the listings. I'm frustrated as a buyer. The seller doesn't even know they missed out on a buyer. And now I'm in this place where I'm like, I'm running all these scenarios through my head, and I'm thinking, how is this good?
Well, I think that you're making there's a couple of assumptions in there, right? First off, 90% of transactions, give or take, are done where a buyer's working with an agent, right? So what we're actually really talking about is agency in the inventory. And in the world that we want, every agent would see all the private exclusives and be able to share them with their clients. So in that world, that really wouldn't come to fruition. If you look at
that world, we've got every company doing the same thing now. Now we have to go to all these different portals to see all this stuff. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's the fear, is that we don't want to go down the slippery slope of having to go to 15 different
it sounds
like seeing all the properties for sale.
Yeah, but that assumes that all those properties don't go to the MLS. And right now
they aren't on MLS.
The vast overwhelming majority, though, end up on the MLS.
eventually after your clients and your agents haven't sold it.
Yeah, but again, that should be up to the agent and the client to decide. When I hear people say, "Oh my God, what's going to happen in this world where what they're describing is a world where everyone's competing. And why are we assuming that the innovation that would come out of that competition would be bad? Why are we assuming that
I'm not worried about competition at
know,
all whatsoever, man.
companies competing, and not just companies, brokerages, but other platforms, other aggregators, other websites competing?
Not even worried about that.
Right?
I don't care about that.
Yeah, ultimately, the best outcome for the client will be the thing that people do. And right now, we're in a situation where the vast majority of listings that agents are getting and going through a multi-phase marketing strategy are ending up on the MLS. And so what we're really talking about, if we're talking about 6% of those listings, let's say, that are not, and we're talking about a scenario where Compass wants to be able to share those with every brokerage, but NAR and Zillow are saying you are not allowed to. You physically cannot do that. That would actually solve everything, because in that world, all the people that work with agents, all the agents, and again, I think about agents. Those are my customer. That's who I think about. That's who I obsess over. All of those agents would have access to those listings. The overwhelming majority of those listings would end up on the MLS. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the seller should be able to decide which websites their listings go to, right? They should be able to decide, you know what, I want my listing here, I want it there. But as long as it goes to the MLS, and if it's on the brokerage website, again, the whole world can see it. It's up to the brokerages to
go there. That's the thing. Like, people don't know to go to Compass. Nobody's going to nobody's thinking, I'm going to look for a house today. I'm going to go to compass.com.
There was a time where no one knew what Zillow was. There was a time where no one knew what homes.com was. There was a time where, and there was a time where no one knew Compass, right? In many ways, the irony of this whole thing is Compass is the most transparent brokerage when it comes to listings. And the reason why is because
I can't see the listings though.
But we're the only brokerage that on their website advertises how many private exclusives we have, right? You call Sotheby's and ask them right now how many private exclusives they have. You're not going to get an answer. And we're the only brokerage where someone can walk into our office and again, the only reason we have to do it this way is because the rules are mandating it, can walk into our office and say, I want to see all of your off-market listings. And so again, I'm actually looking at it from that perspective, saying we're the ones that are the most transparent. And so when I hear people talking about, transparency, it's like, well, we're actually doing everything we can to share them. There was a time before CCP where all of the Compass Coming Soons were on our website. And yes, any person could go onto Compass and see that. So this idea of trying to withhold listings, and really, if we step back, why are people worried about withholding listings? Why do people think we're trying to do this? One of the things I hear often is, you're just trying to double end deals. And the reality is, one, the math shows that we're not, right? Of the 6% of listings that go through the three-phase marketing strategy that don't go to the MLS, the majority are co-broked with agents of other firms. So we're talking about 2% of the listings. The funny thing is, we're in a world now of buyer broker agreements. So if a Compass agent has a buyer, if you're a Compass agent, you have a listing, I'm a Compass agent, I have a buyer, and my buyer buys your listing and we double end the deal as Compass gets the buyer commission. If my buyer buys a different brokerage's listing, Compass gets the commission. So getting the commission either way, this idea of double ending, it actually mathematically in the world of buyer broker agreements, like doesn't really matter. So this has nothing to do with double ending listing.
But you can use the private listings on your website to try to get more buyers.
You buyers can absolutely go and see that. But again,
so that's a way. It's like not, so we can't define it as double ending deals. We're actually using the private listings to get more business.
But isn't it the job of a brokerage? Isn't it the job of an agent to do everything they can to grow their business and get more business?
So here's how I see it is, okay, let's give seller choice, even though my opinion is they already have the choices, all the choices you guys are fighting for, just not done the way you want in an exclusive way. But let's give them the choice. Let's sell the property in the world that you're talking about, where you have these private exclusives, now like the house that I want, I don't even know about. It's on another private exclusive platform that I don't even know about.
But wouldn't your agent know about it?
No. How would my agent know about
Because
it?
in the world that we want, in the world that if these rules
They don't have
are in
to.
place,
They don't
you can
have
see
see at
every.
that point though, at that
Mhm.
point, what are the rules? Okay. Like we have to share our listings, right? Like we're getting away from like sharing our listings within a certain time frame to go to a place where we share our listings with all the agents. I mean,
Before they go to market. Because here's the thing, when the listings right now, and again, in that world, if you're working with an agent, that agent would be able to see that. But the rules don't allow you right now. Because if right now you don't play as a seller and an agent by these rules, you get banned. Now, if you're a homeowner and you get banned and you're not in the MLS, you're not on Zillow, you're not in these places, you're basically being told, sorry, you can't do it. So these rules actually do govern our business, and there isn't a way to operate around that. If I'm an agent, if I get banned from the MLS, we both know it's almost impossible to do my job. And so that's why these rules are so counter to what's in the best interest of an agent, because they're actually banning and fining and effectively regulating out agents. And the reason why, and this is for me, this is the thing that I'd love other brokerage leaders to kind of speak up on this point, which I don't understand, like why we're not just talking about it directly. NAR, the MLSs, and Zillow have free content, free inventory. Best businesses in the world. They get it for free. It's almost like they're the NCAA and agents are the college athletes, pre the new rules, where they work for free. And right now, if there's inventory that does not get steered into those platforms, then they don't get their content for free anymore. And that threatens their business model. And so, in a world where any other business, right? You create content, right? You have a lot of followers, you get a lot of engagement. If you put videos and content on YouTube and YouTube racks up a bunch of clicks and a bunch of hits, you better get paid for it. You better get credit. You better get royalties for it. Right now, if I'm an agent and my listing goes on there, Zillow gets the photos I had to pay for, the listing I had to hustle to win. I had to get it. I had to get the client. They get it. They get it for free. They use it to generate eyeballs and traffic. And then they use that traffic to sell a product back to agents. And I, as the agent who created that content, I get nothing. And that's a heck of a business model. Imagine YouTube didn't have to pay its creators anything.
so
Right?
so why is Zillow winning? Why are they so big?
Because brokerages for so long, right, didn't have the technical capabilities to actually build websites and build the places for consumers to go, and didn't have
They absolutely could. They
they didn't have
absolutely
the financial wherewithal to do it at scale, to advertise, to build the company. They didn't have that ability. And then when they had to initially compete to get that inventory, then NAR changed the rules and said, oh, don't worry, we'll just give you guys become a brokerage, we'll just give you all that inventory for free.
Mm-hmm. So they're a brokerage. They pay for IDX feeds.
Yeah,
all the
they're the only brokerage in the world that doesn't actually win listings and sell homes, right? So
and anyone can do it.
Yeah,
anybody could do that. Like as far as competition goes, anybody could step in and create the next Zillow.
Yeah, but luckily for all of us in the United States, if you have 66% market share, and then you add Redfin and Zillow together, you have over 70%. That's a monopoly, and monopolies are not allowed to create rules and policies that disenfranchise or hurt consumers or stifle competition. And by the way, we're all the beneficiaries of that, because if we didn't have those laws protecting us, then we'd all be in a way worse place. And so, it's a different world when you're a monopoly and you use that monopolistic power to stifle competition. And that's a big crux of what we're fighting for and pushing for.
Yeah. I mean, when you have this David versus Goliath thing, agents stepping up to the big man, you're going to get some support behind that. The way I see it, I'm like, I see what Zillow's doing, like banning things that are, advertise more than a day that want to at that point go on MLS, which that breaks the CCP rule. So they're basically just saying, hey, if you're not going to abide by the rules, that you basically are a member, you're a member of a board, and you're not following the rules of the board that you're a member of, then we're going to ban those listings as a repercussion. And it seems like that's kind of the direction you guys would want to go anyway. Like, don't put your stuff on Zillow, don't put your stuff on MLS, like basically create your own portal, your own MLS, your own Zillow, kind of live in your own little world where you control all your inventory. It seems like that's kind of that. It seems like what they're doing is kind of opening the door, because these MLSs that aren't reprimanding Compass for breaking the CCP in those markets, Zillow is like, well, if the MLSs aren't going to do it, then we're going to step in and do something about it, because it's a slippery slope.
But we all know they're not doing it to protect the slippery slope.
No. Like, for real, like you have merit with what you're saying. Like, there's stuff that we agree on 100%. However, it just seems like them banning it is like a step in what it looks like is the direction you guys want to go in anyway.
I see you're saying, yeah. So a couple of things. One, look, our aspirations are not to build an MLS. Our aspirations are not to be the MLS. We're not trying to be Zillow, right? Like that's not what we're trying to do here. But you're right. It's actually ironic and quite confusing when you think about it. If you're a company, if you're Zillow and you tout yourself on having all the listings, but then you start actually banning listings and kicking them off your own site, then you're actually sort of delegitimizing your own offering to consumers. So you're right. It is why it's quite confusing. And remember, we actually coexisted with Zillow just fine up until about whatever that was a couple of weeks ago. Like we didn't put this ban in place, and so it's interesting to me, right? And we as an industry operated just fine before CCP. CCP, by the way, was the Compass rule. CCP was put into place because Compass had a number of listings that were on its website that were not being put into the MLS. There was on its website, so anyone could see it if they went to the website. They were there, and NAR got together and said, hold on a sec. This threatens our free flow of information. This threatens effectively the free labor that we have. And that rule was put in place for that. It's not clear cooperation. It's forced cooperation. It was saying you have to do this. And,
if you want to be a member of this association and share your listings, you want all the other agents to share listings with you, not necessarily Compass, just saying like an independent brokerage. You want all the other agents to share your listings with them, then you got to play by the same rules. Otherwise, the whole system, the fabric of the system that we built in America in terms of being able to liquidate houses like that, having access to all the listings, we're literally breaking. Look, I'm all about seller's choice and all the things that, you guys are advocating on publicly. But behind the curtain, I feel like that this is the beginnings of a slippery slope. This is my opinion. That doesn't end well. It doesn't end well for consumers, for agents, for anybody. Now, it may end well, like it may be a huge windfall for Compass, but even I played the whole scenario out. I don't even think that plays out very well when we go down this slippery slope.
I would say a few things. First off, there's no windfall for Compass that's not good for agents, because we only succeed if agents succeed. So there's no world in which Compass does well and agents don't. So in any world where Compass is doing well, it means that agents are doing well, because Compass doing well is effectively Compass doing more transactions, right? And agents making more money and being more successful, and homeowners doing more deals. So that the good news for us is that as a brokerage, our interests are aligned with the customer and the entity doing all the work, which is the agent. Look, before CCP, right? You think about, like, let's call it 2010 to 2020, right? Technology was.
What was the rule? Was it 3 days? What was the rule before?
I think it was different. It sort of depended on the market, right? Some market.
Yeah, I think my market was 3 business days. I want to say
some had 3 weeks, some had indefinite. But for a decade, the industry, there wasn't this cataclysmic sort of apocalypse that some people are prognosticating. The industry worked fine, and you actually had the ability for a number of companies to emerge, to build, to grow, to compete. And so we can look to history to give us a sense of what the future might look like, which is often what happens. That for that decade, things were not this, sort of terrible situation. The truth of the matter is brokerages have been doing a version of the Compass three-phase marketing strategy for a long time. We did not invent this. If you think about it, what does a sales mean? A sales mean at its core was an opportunity for agents to get together and share insights about inventory. So a lot of this is actually not particularly new. It's also not anything that if you look at that period of time, there wasn't this like, oh my God, the industry's falling apart. Like I said, though, there's no way in which Compass would ever be successful in a world where agents weren't successful. And again, that's like, I'm fighting for agents. I want to see agents do well. And I think in the world we're in now, homeowners are going to start demanding more choices. They're going to demand more service. They're going to demand more of the service provider, and they're going to expect more. And
I think they have all these choices now.
Well, yet not if Zillow says, hey, put your listing on our website or you get banned. And by the way, think about this. How is it that developers, home builders, the most financially savvy sellers of real estate in the country, they don't have to play by the rules. They can they have their own rules.
They have a different arrangement with MLSs. There's a development process. I bought 5 new constructions in 2022, and they were all on MLS before they weren't even broken ground yet. They were in MLS.
Some are, but I think last year, the number was, it was 300,000 homes by builders. I think
it's more of a development type product. It's not really apples to apples. I think if a developer, I would imagine, if a developer bought a subdivision that was completely built out, he bought it at a discount to flip the houses, they would be on MLS immediately. The construction process, it's kind of a different animal. It's almost like the argument of saying, this privacy thing, that, because in the beginning, like, this is all you heard about, like celebrities and prominent people and movie stars and sports people, and stuff like that.
The funny thing there, Ricky, is Compass wasn't the one saying that, right? This is like kind of gets back to
whatever the case may be. Like, it was part of the argument. I don't know if it came out of you guys' mouths or someone else.
A lot of people were out there saying, the only people who benefit from selling off market are, celebrities and high profile individuals. And I would say back to that, we're not talking about selling off market. Like, none of this has to do with selling off market. Selling a home off market from start to finish is something that a small number of people choose to do each year. It's not something that agents push. It's not something Compass is pushing. I mean, again, I say this all the time, but like, it's the 3-phase marketing strategy for a reason. It's not the 2-phase. It's not the 1-phase. And that 3rd phase is what people overwhelmingly 94% of the time want to do. So I do think, though, for the builders and developers, especially the big home builders, these are publicly traded companies with shareholders and boards. They're going to do what's in their economic best interest. And if they're not, their own shareholders are going to be revolting. So
I understand what you're saying. I just don't think it's apples to apples to regular residential real estate, because it's they're building the house. It's almost like the analogy I was trying to make was, this is good for celebrities. It gives you privacy. But this should also be for mainstream America that, have $300,000 homes.
That's exactly, and that you just hit on exactly one of the key points of this, which is a big chunk of this concept of the Compass 3-phase marketing strategy, is taking the tools that for a long time were only available to the most savvy sellers, developers, home builders, and giving those tools to individuals, to regular, home sellers, and giving them the choice, and just democratizing it. No different than, basically, this is effectively what competition's done in a lot of industries. It used to be, 50 years ago, a computer was $50,000 and was the size of a garage. Now, for $1,000, we can all buy the most powerful computers that exist in the world. So, we're just taking a thing that existed, trying to democratize it, give it to a group of people, and let them decide. And ultimately, look, Compass, as I said, and I'll say again, Compass is not trying to create a world where there is chaos and disconnected information and all of that. We believe in strong MLSs. I think MLSs are important. They have a very vital role. I'm not even anti-Zillow. I believe in competition, right? These are all companies and entities that should just be competing for the client, the consumer, the agent, and ultimately that competition will determine for all of us, for every one of us in this industry, will determine which way we go. And there's so many things that effectively competition can kind of like solve for, in effect. And that's what we should want to say, you know?
The competition thing, though, anybody can create a Zillow. Like, you got Homes, you got Redfin, you got Realtor.com. Anybody can like create the next Zillow and start competing. I don't get the argument against like competition.
I think the argument is when you have monopolistic control, when you have close to 70% market share, you can't compete against monopolies. You certainly can't compete against NAR and the MLSs, right? If tomorrow,
so why fight them if you can't go up? If you can't go up against them?
Yeah, it's a good question. Why? And I'll say this maybe in closing, because I know we're getting to time. We as a company, our history of a company has always been obsessing about agents and the role they play in the transaction, trying to do every single thing we could to help them grow their business and be more successful. And a lot of times, many people and entities said, that's not worth doing. You're going to fail. You're never going to succeed. Don't do it. But as an entrepreneur, you know this, you're an entrepreneur, agents are entrepreneurs. You can't give up. You can't just accept the status quo. You can't just sit back and say, all right, you know what? We can't compete. And so for us, we're going to give everything we have to fighting for agents so that we can try to create a world for them, and not just Compass agents, for all agents, all brokerages, where they have a world where the entities that control their flow of information are doing so in their best interests, not against them. And that's what really this is. This is effectively a battle for that. This is a battle for who's going to control the flow of the most valuable data that exists in the world, which is real estate data. Is it going to be, a trade group masquerading as a trade group? Not really a trade group. Is it going to be Zillow, or is it going to be entities that represent agents and their clients? And so even if the odds might feel insurmountable, you got to go for it. So
yeah, no doubt, man. It's risky. I can say that because, like I say, I think the repercussions, for Compass itself could be really bad. I mean, it could go that direction. But I mean, sometimes you got to throw a Hail Mary. When you're in a situation, you got to try to figure out how to squeeze more out. I
would say also, it's I don't know that it's so much a Hail Mary as it is just standing up for what agents want. Look, Compass, I mean, we didn't have to your point, like we didn't really have to do it. We don't have to do this. But I think when you see kind of what's going on, and think of it this way, this case, right, between Compass and Zillow, it goes far beyond really just Compass and Zillow. It's really a test of whether innovation in real estate will be driven by open competition or dictated by gatekeepers, right? Like Zillow's alleged use of basically using monopoly power to penalize agents and homeowners for marketing outside of its website, its ecosystem. It's not just
Can I just interject on that just for a second? It seems like the repercussions are for MLS rules that you're breaking, not Zillow rules, right? And so is the real beef with the MLS? Because it seems like they're slapping your hand because of MLS rules, not necessarily.
It's a fair question. I think the beef is with anyone that's trying to restrict. The beef is with anyone who's trying to restrict homeowner choice, but also the beef's with anyone who's trying to fine or ban agents.
I guess my question there is, okay, and I don't mean to keep interrupting, but like my question at that point would be, why aren't we suing MLSs? I mean, we're suing Northwest MLS, right? You have a lawsuit against Northwest MLS.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't we suing multiple MLSs? Like, why aren't we suing the MLS that's literally in the crux of this Zillow? Why is that MLS not named on the lawsuit, etc.?
This is the only thing you're going to ask me that I'm going to have to plead the fifth, because I know our general counsel will not want me to wade into that. But I will say this: you're asking a very good question. My personal sort of guess on this whole topic is, even if the NAR rules and the MLS rules didn't exist, this is just my personal speculation. It's not speaking for Compass. My personal speculation would be that Zillow would be enacting their exact ban that they're doing. Regardless of, I think the MLS and NAR rules provide like a convenient backdrop to them, but ultimately I think they would be doing it anyway. And it, again, it's so
maybe not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'll answer the question for you. And that's because you don't have a case against any of the MLSs, because they actually allow you to do the things that you want to do, not exactly how you want to do it. You can have open listings, and you can't do open listings in Northwest MLS because they changed the rule after you did so, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And so you did the open listings in Northwest MLS. They changed the rules. They cut your IDX feed off for Compass agents there, and then you guys filed a lawsuit against them. Why is that? Why is it Northwest MLS? Well, Northwest MLS is not governed by NAR. And so NAR is the one who actually governs these other MLSs and has the open listing policy in place. Whereas you don't have to, like, there is an option for sellers to actually do whatever they want to do, and have a signed contract with you and do whatever it is they want to do.
What I would say to that, though, is why should a seller have to engage in an open listing? Why can't a seller?
So that they can do whatever they want to do.
But why?
So that they have the options. And the bigger question is, why isn't that on one of the options for the 3-phase marketing strategy? Like, you can do this, you can do that. You can also do open listing.
But if a seller wants to work with their agent, right? If you're my agent, if I love you, if I've worked with you in the past, I want to work with you again, I should be able to sign an exclusive agreement with you. And I should be able to say to you, here's how I want you to sell my home. And this is America. Like, like we're lucky, to your point, those other countries, like, they don't all afford their citizens the free market freedoms that we have. And so, it's sort of like, why should I, as a seller, if I love working with you, I want to sign an exclusive with you. I want you to get paid. I want you to represent my home. I want your name on my listing when it goes out on the internet, because
your name's on the listing everywhere. Well, listing agent's name is everywhere on the listing, just to be clear.
Not on certain portals. Not on certain.
Which portals?
Not on Zillow.
Yeah, it is at the bottom.
Come on,
your name is on the listing, on every listing. It has the listing agent named.
Yeah, but we all know that small subtext inside.
It's either there or it's not. You said it's not there, but it is there.
Yeah, but for all intents and purposes, it's not there, right? Zillow built a multi-billion-dollar business on putting other people's names on listings. Which, again, if I'm a seller, I hired you. I didn't, hire the person.
My name's on the listing. And it's being advertised through another broker. So when people go to rickycarruth.com to look at listings, like, they're going to see my name on the listing. They're not going to see the listing agent's name on the listing.
But when they go to Zillow,
right? Well, Zillow is a brokerage. They have the same. It's just like rickycarruth.com. They're just a brokerage nationwide that has IDX feeds.
Yeah, but if I'm an agent and I worked as hard as I did to win a listing, and it goes to Zillow, and that listing is then used to then basically monetize the business model of a company that's then turning around and selling my own leads back to me for what's 40% today. Who knows what it'll be in the future? That's a little challenging to wrap my head around. So
I don't know. Two things. Agents do that all the time. They I know agents that have websites and they funnel leads, and then they refer it out for referral fees all the time.
Yeah, but they don't have 66% of the U.S. consumers on their website.
No, I get that part, but that's like kind of where we are. The second part is nobody has to buy Zillow leads. Like, it's not like mandatory that you buy Zillow leads. Without Zillow, I would have never got to the point where I was selling 100 properties a year as easily as I was selling 100 properties a year, for a lot of reasons. Number one, the buyers. You know how many hours I spent looking up properties for buyers? And then Zillow comes along and took that completely off my plate. I never had to look up enough. The buyers sent me the list of what they wanted to see.
And like I said, I would argue your brokerage should have built that technology. Ultimately, Compass, I don't begrudge.
They have to. Zillow did.
I don't begrudge anyone for buying leads from Zillow. We have a lot of Compass agents.
I don't either. Like, absolutely. There's team models, and newer agents should do everything they can do. They're expensive leads. I wouldn't build a business model around it, and I didn't.
Yeah,
but I did utilize Zillow. Zillow helped me sell more properties in less time, and I never paid them a dime.
Yeah, well, that was that was a different era, and now we're in a world where
It would be the same today. I don't see how it'd be any different. It was literally like 5 years ago or 3 years ago when I retired. But anyway, bro, hey, listen, enjoy see, this is the kind of conversation that the industry needs.
Sure. Oh, no, for sure. I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate you giving us a forum to try to, clarify kind of the fact versus fiction. I think, in closing, what I would say is there's just, like I said, so many narratives out there that I think assume different intent. I think it's an absolutely fair and good debate on what does the world look like as you start to open up to more competition, as you start to open up to different ways of doing things. That's actually a really good debate. But what I think is not so productive in the debate is sort of like speculation around, what our intentions are. And our intentions, as I said, are really clear. I want to help agents win listings. And I don't want to see a world where homeowners and agents get fined and banned. And that's it. It's actually like pretty simple when you break it down. And I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate you setting this up for us. This was fun. And
it was fun.
I'm looking forward to chatting in the future.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Just to piggyback and we'll get out of here. It seems like to me, Compass is very pro agent.
Yes.
Agent.
Yes.
And to me, I'm very pro consumer. I'm just consumer. And I think that might be where, cause there's a lot of stuff that we agree on. Yes, obviously there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that we agree on 100%. There's some things that I question, pretty deeply about what's happening, because I'm looking at it from a lens of pro consumer. You're looking at it from a lens of pro agent. And that might be where a few wires are getting crossed up. But at the end of the day, I feel like, I hope, let's just put it like this. I hope that we made a little bit of progress today is what I hope for.
And you know what I hope for also? I hope that, in the future of our industry, I agree with you. I think there are going to be a lot less agents. Certainly what AI and technology, I'm seeing with Compass agents is going to be able to do is going to be effectively able to supercharge the best agents. There are 1.5 million agents in this country. There probably shouldn't be 1.5 million agents.
Do you really think there's 1.5 still? Because I don't know. Because
I believe that was NAR's latest number. Don't quote me on this. It was 1.4, 1.5, somewhere in there. Right. I saw a stat the other day that California Association of Realtors said that, or CRMLS rather, said 60% of its members did not send a listing to the MLS. Right. So that means 60% of the members didn't get a listing. So there's clearly like a very big imbalance in our industry. But in a world where, and part of the reason why we're so comfortable being pro agent, and I feel like that translates to being pro consumer, is I think in a world where you have the best agents competing for the business of clients, it ultimately ends up being a world where the better outcomes and service and experiences get created for the consumer. I don't think it has to be a world where the consumer and the agent are opposed. And actually, I think a lot of the voices outside of our industry have tried to create that, especially around the lawsuits. It was like consumers versus agents. Yeah. The agents that I know, the agents that you work with and know, like I said, they would do anything for their clients. I know I can name hundreds of agents who I know who personally have literally foregone money, economic opportunities for themselves to advise clients to don't buy this. Don't sell this number. And I think in that world, our industry actually comes more into balance. And so we'll see. It'll be fun.
Yeah. From this standpoint, I tend to disagree with that as far as focusing on what's best for the agent translates to what's best for consumer. I think that's why we are where we are. And we created all this in the first place 40 years ago, because it was an absolute disaster and a mess. And we looked like these other countries and stuff. So we built this incredible system. And I think that's why we created it, because, let's face it, there are a lot of great agents. There are some agents that aren't so great. And, a lot of agents focus on profit, money. There's greedy people out there. And I think that, I don't know that translates, like we're the most resilient group of people that I've ever seen. And the people that talk, smack about agents, it's like, you have no clue what happens over here. You had one bad experience with an agent, and now you think all agents are fit under the stereotype. But like I said, it's kind of like having your hand caught in the cookie jar and trying to play both sides. I would have loved to kept some of my listings, right? But I was like, that was kind of like the greedy side of me saying, oh yeah, let me hang on to these for a second. Even though that might not have been what was best for the consumer. Of course, I couldn't do that. I had to put it on MLS. I had to do
ultimately you did actually what's in the best interest of your clients. And that's why, by the way, that's why you were successful,
So. Appreciate your time today, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. We'll talk again real soon. I'm gonna hold you to that interview with James.
Yeah, but he's got to do that. He's got to do the.
I'm gonna make him do a survey for you and send it over.
Do the survey.
All right. Thanks, brother.
Well, thank you so much.